beautiful people. It's me, EL, your favorite dyslexic book nerd. And I have the pleasure, the honor to have an awesome guest with me here today. And I know y'all are going to love this conversation. Um, I'm gonna let him introduce himself to you guys. How you doing, Justin? Could you introduce yourself to my lovely readers, please?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me here. I am Justin C. Key, and I am an author and a psychiatrist. I say it in that order because I was an author first. I started writing long before I went to medical school. But then, being a psychiatrist has definitely been part of the journey. I do speculative fiction, so I write horror, I write a little bit of fantasy, science fiction, and I've had a lot of short stories published over the last 10 years. And this will be my first novel, The Hospital at the End of the World. And it's a science fiction novel. It's a medical thriller. And I'm excited to have it out in the world. So that's me.
Definitely. Thank you. Thank you. This book right here, y'all. This one right here. It's back there in his foot. Anyway. All right. Let's jump in. Let's start with what inspired the book.
So when I just started medical school, I was the first year in medical school, and I had been writing short stories, and I was trying to break into the short story market. And there's this magazine called Cross Genres, and it had themed submissions, and one of the themes was story. And it's a speculative fiction magazine. So I just started medical school, and I'm like, well, I'm in school, so I'll write about that. So I sat down, and I think from the very beginning, I thought about, okay, how is technology going to affect this field that I'm going into? So I was thinking about AI, and back then AI definitely, wasn't what it is now. There was a lot of speculation in terms of what it would become. So I sat down, wrote a short story. Thankfully, it wasn't published then. It wasn't ready, and I wasn't ready. But over the years, it's expanded. I've expanded the world, expanded the characters, and as I've gone through medical school and through training and become a psychiatrist, definitely just have more life experience. Whereas in the beginning, it was, just the first year, the first few months of medical school was like my experience. So the story was very much just that. But now, I've been doing this for a good amount of time.
Okay. Um, Thinking about the current climate of use of AI, do you think there are parts of your novel that we are headed towards, and do you think your book offers us some real life warnings?
Yeah, so I think that there's some hope, like in terms of for medicine, and then there's some things that I definitely want people to take heed of. I think that AI as a tool, as technology, it's always like any technology. I think it's best in as a tool for human led endeavors, right? So I think it could be very powerful to help like a physician like gain insights on patients, like be able to pull data from just all these other interactions that have happened, to be able to gain insights, and so that then going forward, they can make sure that they aren't missing anything. But the fear is when these technologies are replacing humanity. And I think that unfortunately, just the healthcare system is very ripe with that for that right now because of a lot of the gaps of access to care. And then you hear these stories of people turning to ChatGPT for therapy, and if they're not able to, and if you tell them like, oh no, that's not a real therapist, etc., they're gonna be like, well, I tried to get in with a therapist and I couldn't, or my insurance hasn't covered it. So I understand you're saying that, yeah, this is not the right way to do it, etc., but I don't have anything else, right? And this is free, and I can access it anytime that I want, right? So I think that there's definitely, unfortunately, a lot of gaps that AI could take advantage of right now, and I think it's headed in the wrong direction because of that. I think that it's going to be good on the surface, But when you lose that human intuition, that human experience, I think there's unfortunately a lot of danger that can be had.
What is the significance of? And I don't want to say his name wrong because I say names wrong all the time. If you follow me on TikTok, you know I be screwing names up. What is the significance of Pac's relationship with his father, Philandro? Did I say it right?
Pac and Philando. So like
Yes.
90% there. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so significance of the relationship. I'm a father, and almost want to. I just this first time I'm saying this phrase, but first generation father. In terms of I come from a line of like fathers who just weren't there, and definitely turning that around. So a big part of my identity is being there, being present, and having a relationship with my kids. So um, and I believe that my oldest son is about as old as the idea for this book. So, that's very much been a part of me as I've, crafted this novel. So that's the backdrop. But in the story, I wanted something to motivate Pac in the sense of like he grows up and he's looking to his father. The same way that like my middle son wants to be an author, and we're helping him like publish his self-publish his book now. Um, but at the same
Nice.
time, yeah, 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 he's super excited about it. He's like, so when can this be a movie? I'm like, it takes time. Um, and so at the same time, he's at odds with his father. He doesn't agree with his father. He thinks of him as like the old school, and he's going into like this new direction at the beginning of the book.
Mhm.
But even though that conflict is there, even though disagreement is there, I still wanted to show that there's, a strong relationship there. And that is what pushes, I think, Pac towards the rest of the book. I mean, he finds community in the medical school, but I think that at his lowest points is really like the memory of his father and kind of that work that his father did in building that foundation, that relational foundation that he leans on and he pulls from.
Definitely, I definitely enjoyed the complexity of that relationship and how, even though um he felt like, you know what I'm saying, his dad was old school, he still ended up on that same path, pretty much to say. Do, do you have a favorite quote moment from the book, and what does it represent for you if you do?
Okay, favorite quote or moment. I think one of the I don't know if this is a favorite because favorite implies most enjoyable, but maybe most impactful for me, and maybe I'll think of other ones too. Is there's a moment when a patient dies suddenly and has a bad outcome, and it's in a setting that's unexpected. Um, and I think that it's indicative, I think, the crash course nature of becoming a physician. And it's kind of rooted, very much rooted in an experience that I had, when a patient was doing well in the emergency department. And then we got a page, in the hospital, there's these pages like when people code, like different hospitals have it different ways. And I remember talking to my like senior physician. I was on an internal medicine rotation, so I was like an internal medicine intern, and he was like, "Oh, I hope that's not our guide." And we had just saw it, and we went down, and it was, and it was in very much a setting that it wasn't ICU. It was where people aren't really supposed to be that sick, but all of a sudden somebody got that sick, and being a part of that resuscit that the attempt to resuscitate, and then the failure of it, and then the family being there as well, and it was a hard moment. And then right after that, you have to go on and go to the next patient. That next patient that you go and see, they have no clue, and nor should it be their burden that like something horrible just happened, down the hall or next door or what have you. So I think that definitely was a big moment of my training that made it into the book. Um, the times when Philando and Pac are doing each other's, well, when Philando, his father's doing Pac's hair,
Yeah.
and it shows up in a couple different ways in the book, and in the different ways that it comes in. I thought that that was, I liked that moment of kind of bringing things together. Uh, and then there was a moment where I kind of got to just have fun with the narrative and the prose that has to do with the end stages of this disease that can cause people to almost enter into like a hallucination state. So I don't want to give too much away, but I remember writing that. I had a lot of fun with that.
Definitely. There was a part in the book. There was a quote, and I can't remember the quote right now, but it was um it was during Pac's first year, and it was during I think it was tech and history, that
Hmm. Hmm.
class, and something about um uh us as humans always um something about bumping the road and always looking for the next step to perfection, or some
Yeah.
paraphrase. But that 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 sentence or that quote was really impactful for me. I was like, you know what? That's kind of, yeah, kind of got me thinking about things. Uh, you create specific language to represent things. What prompted this direction instead of using already known language, and what was the research like to do this?
Yeah. So one thing I think that struck me, going to medical school is the the lingo and the language. It's almost like, a lot of ways it's like learning like a new language. It's interesting if you watch The Pit now. That is, I'm surprised watching it because they went full in terms of like not explaining any of the lingo at all, just complete immersion. And as a physician, I'm like, I understand this, but I know other people, don't fully, and
Right.
but it's still a popular show. It's still able. So having that in mind and kind of thinking about how it might evolve, and also wanted to make this like a world that's set apart, distinct, different from what the rest of the country is doing, and also kind of making some of the lingo like my own, like going through medicine. I'm forced to kind of learn the ways that people talk. So this was my kind of way to do it myself. Um, in terms of research, to be honest, it's been so long now, but I do think that I do remember the word choices used being rooted in. So for example, like pendant, I think that the root of that is probably like some Latin root that I looked up in terms of like an outsider, an immigrant. I couldn't tell you exactly one, but years ago when I first kind of came up with that word, and how it might be used there. I remember looking up. So often I will, if I'm making something new or a new name, just to make sure also that I'm not saying something that's like egregious or just like completely different from what it is that I want. I will get inspiration from, for example, looking at like the Latin roots, and then one of the phrases that they use throughout medical school, like just as community, they'll say savage to each other. And when I was in med school, we would say like beast mode. But I couldn't use beast mode because that's a saying from football.
From Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Not Richard Sherman, but his teammate, who's a lot more famous than Richard Sherman. I forget his name right now. But like running back that was like one of the best running backs. He was called beast mode. So that was actually what was in the book for a long time. But then I was like, I need to change this out. So I had to kind of think of another phrase that would signify, like just in one word, like, be one of those words that can mean a whole lot of different things depending on, what's the context of saying that. So yeah, so it definitely been a lot of thought over the years of kind of how that language comes about.
Okay. Um, let's see. We don't want to get too much away. So so um can you describe um Jillian and her um her what she means in the story or her
Yeah,
significance? Say yeah.
yeah. Definitely in terms of Pac setting out on his journey, I
Mhm.
wanted him to have uh, to build friendships early on. And also, he's coming in this place as like an outsider, and I think it could be very hard to go in and just go into that alone. Knowing like going into medical school, it can be very isolating. So I wanted to kind of set the stage for him during this kind of tender time in his life to go into the city with that. But then it also represents how all-consuming like the medical school and going through that can be, because very quickly he realizes like, oh, this person that helped save me along my journey, I haven't taken the time to go see her. And it's not because he doesn't value her, it's just because with all the things that he has to focus on, it's out of sight, out of mind. So that was kind of the basis for that. And then you know what then happens to her is just um, a way, I think, to bring out from both a physician standpoint and a friend standpoint to see like what it looks like to be a patient and to treat an illness from different angles. So that's what I was, in the beginning it was, oh, it's a kind of a cool character to kind of tag along in this. And then as invested more and Pac invested more, it became a lot more.
The world building was amazing. Amazing. I felt like I don't know, by like probably by I want to say chapter one, I was already tapped in, but definitely by like chapter three, four, I was like really tapped into the to the world and everything that was like I felt like I was immersed in the whole. You know what I'm saying? Like in the
Yeah,
whole world. Um, why New York? Why New York, and then why, or was it just like a random picking that New York would be the AI place, and New Orleans would be the we don't want that here place, or
yeah. So, in terms of like why New York, a very simple answer is that that's where I did medical school, so it's kind of like a write what and it was from my experience there. I think that 20 years in the future, there's going to be a lot of things that are familiar. Like if you look 20 years ago, probably the subways from now, like 20 years ago from now, subway system probably looks a lot the same. They probably still have a lot of the same elevators or what have you. So thinking about like as we go forward and there's a lot of technological changes, there's still ACs hanging out the window. You still got walk ups. So I could make something that's still very familiar, and then that makes it ripe for world building from an author standpoint because I spent how many like 5 years there. And that's where I learned, medicine there. That's why I went to medical school. So then that's like, okay, this is where I can start my story and set my hub and kind of like expand on this and what the world as a whole is going to look like. And then going, yeah, with that being set and established, going into somewhere different, which is New Orleans. And thinking about where that would be, it moved around like over the years. It actually, I believe, started with New Orleans, and I moved to somewhere else, and then I came back to New Orleans. But thinking about, so I'm not from New Orleans. My best friend's from New Orleans, but that's my main connection. but always been just fascinated with it as like a cultural hub, and just a place that feels like it's, you know, just so much, not to offend the rest of the United States, so much more, I think, steeped in like rich culture than a lot of what I experience elsewhere. And I think with their geographical like issues, like for example, when it comes to like hurricanes, how they might be affected by climate change going forward, I could definitely see them being in a position where it's like, okay, wherever the country is headed is not in the best interest of us. So I thought it was ripe for both of those reasons, like somewhere to kind of build like a future non AI culture going forward, and also think about kind of like what their societal like interests would be going forward as like some of the problems that we have now are just worsening. So those were how those two cities came to be.
I like it. All right. Can you describe your process for getting published?
Yeah, okay. It's definitely roundabout way, so I tried the traditional like route back in like 2010. I think somewhere on this bookshelf is Guide to Literary Agents, and it's from like 2000. It's literally from 2010. I had written a few trunk novels, well, novels very early on. I think they're up here printed somewhere. And I learned how to write query letters, and I sent the query letters out to a ton of agents, based on that guide, the agents that were publishing the type of works that I have written, looking at like comps, like what the stories that it's comparable to, and ultimately say it's like a learning experience because I got a few responses, a lot of rejections, few responses that asked to see the manuscript, and I think I got a couple like what they call like requests for full manuscripts, but then ultimately not much came out of it. But I think that being early on and being very, I think, hungry at that time, and having read Stephen King's On Writing, where he said the first million words of practice, I was like, okay, this I'm keep going. This was training for the future. So then I, wrote a lot of short stories, got short stories published, and that was actually something that was easier for me to manage during medical school, like writing short stories. And then I knew I wanted to come back to novels, but then the idea came up for publishing a short story collection. Like, I actually found an agent through that, and I didn't even before that I didn't even know it was too much of a possibility. But a literary agent got familiar with my work and was like, "I think you have enough here for a short story collection." And so we worked on that, and got it ready to send out to publishing houses. I met with a couple, and I met with HarperCollins. And the night before I met with the editor at HarperCollins, my agent said, hey, she asked if there's anything else you're working on. And me and my agent had been, he had seen like the novel that I've been working on, and we had kind of worked on development together for it to go out with it in the future. But he said, let's prepare to talk about it tomorrow. Just, briefly if it comes up. So I met with the editor. She loved like my short stories and my short story collection. And then she was like, what else are you working on? And I told her about this novel, about AI and medicine set in a near future. And then the next day, my agent came back and said, like, hey, they want both. HarperCollins, they want to publish both of them. So
Nice.
and so that was a big moment for me. A great surprise. And the hospital. Oh, sorry, The World Wasn't Ready for You came out just a little bit over 2 years now at the end of 2023. And then the last couple of years, I've been, finishing and revising and, going through, I think, the very different process of making a novel, especially a first novel, I think, getting it there, and I'm 2 weeks out, 2 weeks in a day. It'll be 15 days to be out in the world. Well, more out in the world. It's great to see it, it's great to see it popping up.
Definitely. Um, what? Why does representation in literature matter, and especially in the speculative fiction horror genre?
Yeah, so representation matters a lot. I think in terms of reaching like different I think audiences. I think reading was a huge thing for me growing up. I think that it's the main reason I was able to go to medical school because I just read so much as a kid. So I think that there's a lot of and it's your way to kind of like independently learn, like that having that love for a book because there's gonna be books that that you get assigned in school. I think very early on, being able to see yourself in the pages. Can help shield against that to later. If your first introduction to it is like reading these books that you feel like is a chore, then reading is going to be a chore versus like, oh, this is something I love, and now I have to do it in a way that I don't love as much, but I still love this. So being able to reach more, I think, is very important. And then how readers are able to form their worldview. I think that it was very telling for me when I set out to write my first book, that the main character was this blonde haired, blue eyed, like white kid. And I grew up in Washington D.C., which was Chocolate City at the time. I went to all black schools; it was all black everything, and so in my mind, though, subconsciously, like white people was still the main character, right? Because that's just what I read. And obviously, with my work through the years, like I came into my own and started to be able to accept that, like, okay, it doesn't have to be anything special about a character for them to be black. There doesn't need to be a reason. That's my default, so that could be the default in writing. Um, in terms of in speculative fiction, I think that speculative fiction, science fiction, horror, fantasy, basically anything where the rules of this world is just different. Um, I think it's really like a great playing ground for and setting to get messages across, right? Like, where you're able to kind of draw people in to have thoughts about situations that are relevant to our current society and get past their kind of preconceived notions, right? Like, if I have a story about immigration, for example, and it's, and I make it about, extraterrestrials, or I make it like set in the far future, or have something, then I'm not going to. I have less of a chance to immediately lose somebody who's like, I already know what my opinion is. I already know what my stance is. They come to it and they're like, okay, this is a science fiction story, et cetera, et cetera. Oh, I can relate to this entity or what have you. So I think it's very powerful for that, and I think particularly with horror, another thing with horror that I've learned from reading and writing, and that it's a great place to explore human emotions in like a safe space. It's interesting just with like I think of roller coasters. It's counterintuitive that we would enjoy getting on them because we feel like we're going to die or we're in danger, but we also have that mental awareness that I'm going to be okay. Like people wouldn't get on roller coasters if they thought they had like a 1% chance of dying. It's because they're pretty sure they're going to survive it, right? And so then it allows us to have, I think, these terrifying or hard emotions, but in a safe space. And I think horror does that. So us having greater representation in that, and also not being like the side characters in horror, or just the ones that either the magical Negro or the ones that like are going to die first, we're the main character. So, and I love to see that it's more and more of that these days.
Definitely. Who is your biggest cheerleader?
No, well, my wife's my biggest cheerleader. Yeah, yeah. So, um, yeah, and we've been together, married going on 15 years this year, but together two
Congrats.
more, so like 17 years. So yeah, I was just starting out trying to write when I met her, and she, despite that, she continued on. So but yeah, she's been a great cheerleader through and through.
All right, all right. We're getting down to the last two questions.
All
All
right.
right, all right. So again, not to give anything away. Let's. Can you sum up the novel in 10 words or less?
Okay, see, 10 words or less. Let's see. Warnings about AI while surviving the difficulties of becoming a doctor.
I like it.
That was a
What?
hard one. That was a hard 10 words or less.
Right? You're like,
I'm gonna have to I'm gonna have to tell my team like I need to prep for this one in the future because that's a good one. That I could just and I'm about to post that on TikTok now because
put that down. Put that
yeah.
down. What is on the horizon for you?
So, I have a few short stories coming out this year. I got a short story and a companion essay is going to be in this anthology about Black mental health. I have a name here. If I can find a name for it, well, cheap. And then I have a short story coming out in light speed. It's science fiction. It's about a psychiatrist, and it's called Margins. So that'll be coming out, and then I have a lot of novels in me. I've been working on this horror sci-fi thriller crossover that's about like quantum mechanics. Like if you're familiar with like Schrodinger's cat and the idea that like there's two different states can exist based on the position of some quantum particle. So taking that idea and then what if the decision is like this best friend, which is a psychopath, like chooses to kill the main character or not. So the main character is basically switching between these two realities where they're dead in one and alive in the other. It's a lot of body horror, and then there's bringing in that technical part. So it deals with multiple universes, but not in kind of the popcorny way. It's more in kind of the rooted in the science that's already available way. Um, and then I'll say real quick, so that anthology is going to be called 88 Unashamed Black Mental Health Stories, and it should be coming out in May of 2026 this year. So I have two pieces of work in that.
I'm definitely gonna check that out.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, where can my faithful readers here find you? Where can they follow you so they can keep up with what's coming down the pipeline? And where can they get the book? I know it's out February 3rd. Let them know.
Yeah. So JustinCKey.com. That's my website. And actually, I have like a promotion up there right now where an original short story unpublished, if you pre-order the book and you go back to that page on my website, you can download the new short story. It's set in the world, and I'll send it to you, and I also did like an audio for it, and then Justin C Key on social, so TikTok and Instagram. Yeah, those are the main things. And then you can pre-order the book anywhere really that sells books. Your favorite place to pre-order books. Oh, and then Sister Sci-Fi Bookstore is doing like a promo where there's going to be signed book plates. So if you're thinking about if you don't know exactly where to order from, go there and then you'll get a signed book plate. I'm doing that actually very soon, so I can get it out in time.
I'm gonna have to pre-order mine right now
Yeah, yeah,
so I can get that signed book plate. Absolutely. Thank you for sitting down with me. I appreciate it so much. Hey, y'all know book comes out February 3rd. So, but after y'all see this, the book will be out.
yeah,
So,
yeah,
if you ain't already got the book, you
yeah.
need
Go
to
get
run
it.
and get the book,
Uh huh.
right? Run and
Yeah,
get it. All right. Absolutely.
yeah,
Thank you so much, Justin. This has been awesome. I appreciate your time, and we hope to see you again.
yeah. Thank you so much. Thanks so much for taking the time to read it. I'm glad you enjoyed it, and jumping on here to have a conversation with me. This is the dream come true for me. So I really appreciate it.
Definitely. Until next time, y'all. Y'all do me a favor and go read a book.